Welcome to Web Design Tips number 2. Now in number 1 we discussed what things you need to consider before starting your design. In this segment we're going to discuss things that you need to consider before getting in a career or serious hobby in design. So we're going to discuss things about education, programming languages, and things like that. So we're still not yet getting into the hands-on part of design, but still things that you really need to work on before even doing any kind of design. So let's get started. The first part is education. A degree or formal instruction is not necessary, but it's helpful. You need to really assess yourself first. If you're a good self-learner, then you might not need a degree. There are very many successful designers and developers who are self-taught. It just all depends on how well you are learning on your own. If you need some formal structure, you might want a school environment. I personally have got a degree in web design, and I feel that I really benefited from that. So you really need to assess yourself before you make that kind of decision. A lot of people think it's necessary to have a degree, but I kind of disagree with that. There's more to web design than simply an eye for what looks good. As we mentioned in number 1, design is more than just what the site looks like. There's a lot of strategy involved, and design is focused around usability and accessibility, things like that. So we're not just designing a piece of artwork. There's a lot more that goes in behind it, so you really need to be familiar with that. Staying on top of the ever-changing standards. Web standards are constantly changing, as are the browsers. So you really need to stay on top of that. It's a really fast-paced, changing environment, so you need to be willing to keep up with the pace. And strong communication skills are definitely required, especially if you're going to be working with clients or other designers. You really need good communication. You need to have good writing and spelling skills if you're going to be managing content, things like that. HTML and programming. So even with advanced software today, knowledge of HTML and some popular languages will give you an advantage. There are a lot of WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, editors, where many designers don't even need to know a single line of code. But if you do know the code, you have a very strong advantage and are a much more versatile designer. Knowing the standards of XHTML and CSS is extremely valuable. This goes along with the first point. It's just staying on top of the current web standards and being able to code in the most up-to-date XHTML and CSS versions. Different clients and employers have different needs and requirements. Study programming that interests you the most and be very good at it. Some people might say you need to learn PHP or you need to learn ASP. However, it really depends where you're going. If you want to work for a company that programs mainly in Microsoft, then yeah, you might want to learn ASP and C# and things like that. But it's not a necessity. You might not even want to program at all, so this might not even apply to you. Just learn something that you're interested in, and there will most likely be people out there that will have a need for you, especially if you're really good at what you do. Learn an art. Now I'm not suggesting that you need to become an artist to be a designer. As I specified before, these are two very different things. However, I think practicing an art form really gives you dedication, organization, and overall design principle skills that are really helpful in web design. Get a sketchbook and get used to sketching, even if they are not just web page ideas. I highly recommend any designer should at least be able to sketch. Now, like I said, you don't have to be an artist, but sketching designs, I feel, is very important in coming up with a design or a concept. And also, if you just sketch things just for fun, it'll get you used to tapping into that creative mind that everybody has. Practicing any art discipline will give you a better eye for design as well as build up your creative side. And that's what I just mentioned. Participating in any kind of art form will kind of crack open that creative core that I know everybody has. You don't have to be a great artist. Just become familiar with good design principles, and most structured art techniques and disciplines have generally the same type of design principles, and they will carry on into web design. Now, standards and everything, that's another story. But overall, you'll learn a good eye for design if you take up some kind of art form. My final thoughts? It is more important to stay on top of web standards, not trends. We really need to distinguish between these two. There are trends out there that aren't going to last. You need to decide for yourself whether it's worth it to you to learn those trends and to practice those trends. If they're simply just visual trends, such as reflective text or glossy buttons, those styles are going to come and go, and they may not be of value to you. However, standards have more to do with XHTML and CSS standards, accessibility and usability standards, things like that. You really need to distinguish those and put standards before trends. Get inspired. Make a list of sites you like and learn how you can achieve that design. I know I like to bookmark sites whenever I see them, look at their source code, things like that. I mentioned that in our first lesson on web design. So you really can learn design from other people. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Learn from others and eventually your own style will come through. If you're a self-learner, get reputable and up-to-date reference books and materials. It's always good to have good reference books and videos and things like that, but just make sure they're up-to-date and with the current standards. The designer is more important than the software. This is huge. People think they have to have a certain operating system or brand of computer or type of software that does everything. But if you just don't know design principles, it doesn't matter if you can make a killer layout in Photoshop if you can't make that site usable and up to date with web standards. So I feel that's a really important point. And just a few references for you. The W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, they basically create all the current web standards, and they also have some very helpful tools and articles on their site. So I highly recommend everybody bookmark this site and use it often. They have a very nice XHTML validator that I use constantly. It is a very nice tool. SecretSites.com is another good resource for web design tips and the so-called secrets of good web design. And KillerSites.com, another similar source with tutorials, tips, and articles on great web design. So this concludes number 2 of our web design tips. I hope you stay tuned for future videos where we will be getting into hands-on tutorials as well as other good tips to always consider before and during designs. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and I thank you again for watching, and stay tuned on my YouTube channel for more great tutorials and other types of videos.